Now, in today's podcast, we're going to start talking about blockchain use cases. I've had a lot of folks talk to us about where we see the company going beyond cryptocurrencies, and we've talked a lot about the opportunity to participate in future blockchain networks and new applications of this incredible technology. And so today, I have Ashish Gadnis with me, who is the CEO of BanQu.
Yes.
And he and I are going to be talking about all things blockchain, but primarily we're going to talk about an interesting application that he's building at his company, which will be an example of the types of applications that we see evolving in the future. And sort of just to set the stage here, Ashish, maybe sort of introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about your background. And a great question might be how in the world did we get to meet each other? So why don't you start?
Thank you again for the opportunity. I feel very blessed to be here. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of BanQu. And how we met? So we met 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
I can't believe it's been that long.
10 years, oh my God.
We were just young teenagers then. But we
I had a lot more hair then, by the way.
There you go.
No, that was on purpose.
When I was doing consulting for insurance companies, and a mutual friend, Sarai Namasia, introduced us. And I just followed John, and fast forward today, knocked on his door to join our board, and here we are.
Yeah, so Serena calls me and says, John, or actually she texts me, because everybody's on text now, and she's like, I want to talk to you about something. And then I speak to her, and she says, I'm on the board of this new blockchain company. You're doing some blockchain stuff too, aren't you? I was like, yeah, sort of. and she describes that she was back working with you on this new company, and I've since ascended to the board as well. So that was the purpose of the call. So it's great to have you here in our podcast. And for the benefit of folks seeing this for the first time, I'm John Belizaire, CEO of Soluna. And so I want to kick the topic off. I want to make these podcasts really about different use cases. And the key question is, beyond cryptocurrencies, what's blockchain any good for? And that's really been a lot of the discussion in just about any type of press, materials you're reading, discussions that people are talking about. Some people have talked about it as, the solution to the Facebook identity problem, right? So if you own your own identity, you can put it on a blockchain, and then you can, disseminate portions of your information, right, and manage who gets it and charge for it. So you can actually generate value from data that you create, rather than Facebook or other large walled gardens doing it. I've heard this concept about the Menome. Have you heard of that? That's basically taking all of your genomic data, phenomic data, and basically putting it on the blockchain.
Correct.
And then also making that available.
Yes.
We've heard about other applications, like the opportunity to sort of make property also become title management. Estonia has put their entire property management system on the blockchain and using that to provide more transparency. There's all sorts of interesting applications. A lot of it is unclear where it will go, but there are some applications that actually have direct and I would say near-term opportunities, and that's what brings us to BanQu.
Yes.
So why don't you start by telling us what problem? Well, how'd you every company has an interesting founding story. So why don't you tell us what BanQu is, and how did you start the company?
So BanQu started when I got into a fight. So it was back in 2014. So and I'm ADHD, so I'm going to jump around a little bit here. Yep. So I had enough coffee today. Mm-hmm. So I sold my last startup in 2012. So built a software company, sold it to another software company, and decided I was done being an entrepreneur, and spent a couple of years volunteering in Congo, Eastern Congo, DRC.
So cool.
And found that...
And how did you decide to do that? Like, you could have done anything.
Yes, I could have. Yeah, I could have bought Bitcoin, but I didn't.
I started writing. I started doing like a blog one summer, wrote a bunch of books. Yeah.
Started a designer shoe label, so I didn't do any of that. But, I grew up poor. I grew up poor in India, and I hated being poor. I hated standing in the ration card line, because in India, if you were growing up in the slums, you had to stand every other day to just get rice and wheat and oil. Yeah. And so I always had this dream that someday I want to end extreme poverty. But So when I was able to kind of walk away from the corporate world, I decided to volunteer, right? And so there was an opportunity to be a volunteer CEO in Eastern Congo for USAID. And so I jumped at it, and I started going in and out of the DRC. But it kind of broke me because I saw a part of the world in a lens of poverty that I didn't think existed, right? So I thought I was poor.
And it was a whole different level.
Yeah, I get to Congo, and I think I was like an upper middle class guy compared to these people, right? So my ego was completely broken, which is great. So I was very humbled, and so I started working with these poor women farmers to help build supply chains for their crop, right? Coffee, cacao, cassava, and we were running a social enterprise. The classic. Everybody else was it's the flavor of the day. And
was it microfinance related or anything like that?
It was a combination. So it was using technology, using microfinance loan mechanisms, connecting supply chain, and kind of more of an integrated model, but classic, like Grameen meets 1 Acre Fund meets Kiva kind of thing.
Yeah. And USAID does that sort of thing. It's not just sort of the financial aid and specific crops or resources to these countries. It also provides sort of self-improvement or help type of services. Is that
correct? So that was kind of the idea, right? To go in and start a business that is partly half and half. So it was 50% funded by USAID and then 50% funded by corporate, right? But a classic social enterprise where you're driven more with the social cause of empowering the last mile,
right?
And so we started winning awards. We won the Human Centered Design Award, and
That's cool.
it's like so. I was just like, but something was missing, and it all came down to a fight. So what happened is, end of 2014, I was working with these women farmers. One of the women farmers wanted to open a bank account. And for me, that was like the smartest thing anybody had said, right? And it was kind of gave me a lens into how smart women are, smarter than men will ever be. Men are just idiots. And
I agree with that for the record.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's just a fact, right? And so,
Absolutely,
she had seen horrors that none of us will ever even understand, right? But, she had a family of 8. She was growing crops. And I said, let's go open a bank account, right? Because she kind of saw that, the value of opening a bank account, right? Instead of being under microfinance loan burden, right? But when we got to the bank, the local bank said no. And I got into a fight because he said I can't bank her. And I got into this fight because she had multiple United Nations identity cards. She had Harvest. She could prove that she had Harvest, but it was sitting in our database, right? She had microfinance loans from 3 different microfinance institutions, and she had all these crumpled pieces of paper, right? And as the fight went on, I was getting frustrated. In Congo, can get violent pretty quickly. And like at 4 hours into it, the guy goes, "Look, man, I can't bank her, but I'll bank you."
I see.
And it was like a punch in the gut. And that when he said, "I can't bank her, but I'll bank you," the word "bank you" for some reason just stuck in me. And I came back and I said, there's a flaw. There's a flaw in the social enterprise model. There's a flaw in the microfinance model. And I didn't have an answer then. But the flaw was that this mother was participating in the supply chain of coffee, cacao, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Maybe she's making your Abercrombie jeans, right? For all
Right.
But she had no way to prove her history in that supply chain. There was no way
Which
for
a bank
her
needs to see. Like a bank needs to see that you have some economic history, some economic footprint, right?
Exactly. No way she could prove her transaction data. And this is 2014, right? And just kind of jumping back to 1994, when I came to the U.S. for the first time, legally, if anybody's listening. These days, right? You just want to be sure, right?
Yeah, I get it.
You never know, right?
But
anyway, so at the end
NSA, this guy's clean, I'm clean.
Totally clean. Green card and everything. Look me up.
Okay,
but what was interesting, the difference between 1994 and 2014, which kind of the heart of BanQu is that at the end of the first month, I had a rent receipt. I had a pay stub. And I had a utility bill. And my boss in Boston said, take these 3 pieces of paper, go to the local credit union, they'll let you open a bank account.
Right.
So in a weird way, 20 years before 2014, I was able to be bankable.
Right.
Because my transaction history of the utility bill, the rent receipt was valuable.
Right.
Whereas in 2014, here's this mother who had 10 pieces of paper.
Right.
But she didn't exist in the supply chain. So that's kind of when I took a step back. I quit my volunteer CEO role and I kind of went back to my old team and I said, guys, let's give this a shot, right? Like, what can we do? So that's kind of where we started looking at blockchain, but we decided not to look at the value element of blockchain.
Right.
So, there's 3 elements, right? Value, consensus, and immutability. And we said, that mother doesn't really care about cryptocurrencies. What the mother cares is that can she prove her existence in that supply chain?
Right.
How does she prove her existence in the supply chain? If she can show every bag of coffee that she ever sold, if she can show that she has 3 microfinance loans that she's applying towards seeds, fertilizers, or whatever, suddenly she becomes legit. If she becomes legit, she has better access to credit. If she has better access to credit, now you build an ecosystem around her that is not dependent on aid. Right. And so that's kind of where the whole genesis of BanQu came about is, and the what if thought we had is, what if we use blockchain in a way that the mother gets an equal copy of every transaction, that she is the rightful participant and owner. She will never be at the receiving end of aid. She'll participate equally. So that's the journey.
Yeah.
And I'll see if that makes sense.
So let me unpack a couple of things there. Yeah. So number one, you've got a problem where you have this woman who's a farmer.
Yes.
She's an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
She receives microfinance backing and so forth, and she has other support that's helping her in her goal to be successful and to better herself. And she goes to do what any other entrepreneur would do, which is to open a bank account because she's going to accumulate funds and she may want to get loans from the bank, et cetera, to expand what she's doing. And she's unable to do so because none of the materials that she's able to present to the bank provide any insight into her. Would it be identity as the issue, or is it her enterprise? Which one was the problem?
So identity is not the issue, right?
Okay.
So and this is kind of where a lot of the, it's not the argument, but the, a healthy discussion is everybody thinks blockchain is the solution to identity. In my humble opinion.
It's known as the identity platform.
Right.
It's known as the value platform. It's all different.
Right. That's true if you're in the not in the world. Yes. If you're in the developed world, yes. But if you're in the developing world, the identity is not the problem, because everybody, like if you look at refugees or women farmers, especially women farmers, right? They have identity cards, right? What's missing is the transaction identity.
I see.
Transaction identity is a collection of life events, right? Or transactions that happen, right? So the real value, at least for us of blockchain, was that at that time was if the identity, it could be anything, right? A government issued identity card. If that's coupled with your transaction identity, that's the breakthrough, which nobody had ever looked at.
Got it. And why isn't there any transaction identity in those parts of the world?
Here's why, right? Because in those parts of the world, the data sits in the silos of those enterprises that interact with that mother. Right. But at no given time, the mother gets a 360-degree view. So what happens is there's one aid agency, there's another, say, for example, social enterprise, right? Their sense of doing good in the world is decoupled from the transaction history, right? So if you're a social enterprise or if you're a microfinance institution, you're going to walk in, give the mother loan A, then loan B, loan C, right?
I see.
And from loan A to B to C, you're just looking at the repayment mechanism, right? They're not looking at the transaction behind that loan that's saying, did she use loan A to buy seeds?
Right.
Did she grow harvest on a 1-acre plot? How much of that sold? How much of that was consumed? And how much of that was waste?
I see.
Right?
Right.
So they don't capture that data because it's not relevant to their business model.
Right.
And
or
so,
to their sort of relationship with her is not to see the whole transaction, is they're part of the transaction.
Exactly.
And most of their parts is to, it seems, at least on the microfinance side, it's like collecting the monies that she's due them, but there's no insight into how she generated the capital and so forth. And so when you look at entrepreneurship and creating businesses, it's not just the thing that you're building, but the transaction history that you create that shows the value you've created.
Exactly.
And that's what's bankable. Right?
Absolutely. And if you then attach it to supply chain, right? So this is kind of one of the biggest aha moments for us was that how do you break the cycle of poverty? The cycle of poverty, at least for us, and we've proven that now, over the last 2 years, is that there's supply chains that are now going in and out of these emerging markets, right? So when the mother grows her coffee or cacao and it shows up in your coffee here in New York, she's in that supply chain. She's just invisible, right?
Right.
So what you do is if you can couple the transaction history with the actual supply chain data, she can prove that I sold 40 kilos every 6 weeks at this price point, at this quality metric, right? So what you've built is this enterprise CRM around her. It's like any other company would do that, right? I mean, it's CRM 101, connect the inventory management system, and you just started a business.
Interesting. So take me one step further. So how do you implement this now? So what does she get from BanQu, and what does the bank get from BanQu, and maybe just expand on that part of the picture.
Yeah, so we're live in 8 countries now with commercial contracts with some of the largest brands in the world. So the way it works is that we're a software as a service company. We're for-profit, for-purpose software as a service company. A large brand calls us and says, hey, we want traceability and transparency in our supply chain. And the goodness of heart is there, but the real value is we want to make our supply chain more transparent, which means it's more cost effective. If it's cost effective, we can do better forecasting. And if we can do better forecasting, we'll create a circular economy where our products will find markets in these places where there wasn't one, right? So that's kind of the baseline. So what's the experience for the mother? One thing we spend a lot of time building is that the ability to deliver the value of blockchain without the mother ever knowing it's blockchain, which means everything had to be delivered via SMS. So she's not logging onto an app, because I see a lot of these apps for poor people. And I'm like, you can't treat people like that, right? It's just, you got to meet people where they are. So the way it works is very simple. I'll walk you through a use case, which is, we have thousands of farmers and refugees on our platform today. If you're a farmer that grows, say, coffee or cacao or cassava, in the non-BanQu world, you wake up in the morning, you bring your crop to a broker or a cooperative, and then that cooperative will bring it to another broker, and that broker will bring it to the brand. Let's just simple example, right?
Okay.
In that example, it's fraught with errors and inefficiency, right? So the brand doesn't know who the mother farmer is, right? In the non-BanQu world, because they're relying on these multiple supply chain intermediaries, right? Number one, which means they're spending millions of dollars just to certify that supply chain, right? So
how do they do that? They send people out?
After the fact.
Interesting.
So they'll send and it's all spot checking or random sampling, right? So if they're buying from 100,000...
So the threat of sort of the random sampling is supposed to reduce the...
Right. When somebody says fair trade, really is what I ask. But not in like a, not being an ass about it, but
Right.
Sorry, I didn't want to say
it probably,
bad words.
it probably helps, but it could be done better if
it can be done better.
The entire thing was digitized.
Exactly. So the second problem is that because nobody knows who the mother is, right? The first chain of custody change. So mother to the broker, she can be cheated all day long.
And
right?
how does that happen?
In the non-BanQu world. So if I bring 40 kilos of coffee or cassava or corn, right, and I sell it to you as the broker, right, and then you're going to take it up. In a situation like this, you're going to maybe record 30 kilos. You're going to pay me for 30 kilos, and then you're going to sell 40 kilos upstream.
And this whole transaction is a cash transaction.
It's all cash, right? Even though the mother might have a cell phone that has M-Pesa on it.
I see.
Right?
Interesting.
And then the third problem is that because of these first two inefficiencies, the brand is losing money because it's trying to build a forecasting system that has built-in loss in it.
I see.
Right? So because they don't know the quality until it hits the floor. They don't know the velocity with which the product's going to move. And most importantly, they don't know what the productivity can be. Right? So if you're growing cacao or coffee or cassava, whatever, right, and if you have a 1 acre plot, if I use good agronomy, right, because I knew your land, I can increase your harvest, protect the environment, and I've built a book of business for you, the farmer, that's not subsistence. It's more livelihood, right? It's not day to day. So I'm just defining the problem very, very, focused. Now comes in BanQu, right? You look at the same supply chain, right? Mother to the broker to another broker to the brand.
Right.
And so what we do is we sell software as a service, just like a Salesforce.com or a NetSuite.com at the brand level. And they say we have 1,000 farmers that we want to buy crop from, right? So what we do is, because it's all configurable, we configure, it takes about a couple of weeks. And then we will go out and do a train the trainer. And the way that it works is that the buyer and the selling stations, right, in that supply chain will register the farmer. How does the registration work? The farmer comes to a registration point. So it's, they do like a weekday drives where they'll come to, and for these women farmers,
they get together to do this.
Yes, for them it's like suddenly this pride moment, right? Because people are not showing up with used shoes or Tom's shoes or on t-shirts and stuff like that. They're saying, hey, we're
product that's going to participate in global supply chain.
Yes, we will buy your crop, which is so empowering, right? So when the mother registers, so the mother has to have only an SMS phone, no smartphone. The buying station has either a tablet or some sort of a semi-smartphone. When she registers, she gets an SMS confirming. and we register. Everything's on blockchain. So we run a non-database blockchain platform. So everything is on blockchain. And so what happens is that when
Is there a particular blockchain that you're using?
Yes, we use a permissioned Ethereum ledger, but we don't monetize the currency because we don't think it's ethical to monetize the currency because we don't need to. We get paid by the brands, right? So what happens is the mother now is registered on the blockchain, and we have a configurator that allows us to meet the country regulations. So in some countries, like in Zambia, for example, we just connected to the national register card, which is the equivalent of a social security card. Whereas on the Somalia-Kenya border, it's their UN identity card. Whereas in East Asia, it's a cell phone and another. So it's not, in some cases, we can take pictures. It's very configurable.
So to your point, the identity is not the problem. So you have ways to identify.
The mother has identity cards. She's walking around within her back pocket, right?
Right.
So what happens now, the mother has... and the training is not about, hey, this is suddenly blockchain. The training is from now on, Mama Farmer, you are going to get a guaranteed price. You're going to get the quality, the quantity, and the payout is guaranteed, and it's all going to come through you via SMS.
So now you've eliminated all of the potential the loss in the system.
Right.
And we've not eliminated
exactly. And you've not eliminated the middleman, right? Because we respect supply chain, and we're not saying we don't.
Well, someone has to pick up the coffee,
exactly,
right?
It's exactly.
They still have a role.
You nailed it. Exactly. So the transaction works very simple, right? So the mother brings her crop in a bag, and she brings it to the selling station. We come from the Sarbanes-Oxley world, so we build a segregation of duties, right? So when she drops it off, it's weighed and tagged, and we do a geolocator. And the mother gets an SMS message with a 9-digit token. It's not a crypto token. That 9-digit token is the guarantee of the payouts. It's almost like mobile money that sits on our SMS phone that says you can go cash this out today, 2 days later, 3 days later. You have to bring your identity, which is the original, right? And the cash out station doesn't know who the mother is.
Right.
So you've kept...
They just know based on this token, this is what they're supposed to pay out. That's it.
Exactly, right? So now the mother sells her, but this is the value for the brand, right? So the value for the brand is extremely commercial because the minute the bag chain of custody changed hands, the brand knows. Right. The brand knows, I moved 40 kilos. I moved 200 kilos, real time. This was the farmer. This was the buying station. And we run an asset management platform on blockchain. So they can run an asset history and say, hold on, 40 kilos, 30 kilos didn't get paid.
Interesting.
Because till the mother goes and does a cash out, the blockchain doesn't fulfill the smart contract.
I see.
Right? So the cash out then happens. She walks with her phone. I have like a lot of stories where the mothers are like giggling because nobody's going to steal their money now.
Right.
Right? They can walk out to
so it's no longer a cash transaction. So they have money. It's stored essentially on the blockchain.
Right.
So it's there forever.
Correct.
And anytime they can cash out.
And that money is fiat currency.
Wait, it's kind of a bank for them.
Yes. It's a fiat currency though, right? So it's not like she doesn't have to worry about crypto.
Right. And the value of crypto, it's basically a tie to that fiat currency. Yeah.
And it's basically, if you're 40 Congolese francs or 40 Zambian kwacha, it's 40 Zambian kwacha. She doesn't care of the hedge or none of that stuff, right?
Right. Interesting.
And we're already started to thinking about integration with banks and mobile money and stuff like that, right? But for now, the way it works is then she comes to a cash out station, shows her phone, shows her identity, and then she gets a final confirmation token. This is the KYC AML solution for crops, to secure that the mother is who she says she is, where she's supposed to be, and she actually got paid. Oh. And because it's blockchain, we use the pure blockchain in the sense that all sides of the ledger get a copy.
Right.
The mother gets an SMS saying, this is your final token. Did you get paid? So and this is all in local language.
Right.
No, and they're very literate, right? I've never met a farmer who's not literate. And so she says, yes, I got paid. And we've had incidences where she'll say, I didn't get paid. And the entire supply chain knows real time what's going on, right? Because that 40 kilos keeps its provenance.
So you're constantly tracking where that's going.
Right.
And you know where it came from.
Yes.
You know exactly the farmer that it came from.
Yes.
You know where it was picked up. You know what price, how much was picked up. You know what price it should be.
And which was not paid or not paid.
Right. And the translation of the price to the weight is also
it's a configurator.
Is all configured in the system. Got it. Okay.
Right. And now we have an open API. So if you said you wanted to pull the real-time pricing from the Chicago Grain Board, I can do that. So a mother in Zambia or Indonesia or wherever, right, will know if she's getting fair price
Right.
on the commodity, and she doesn't have to rely on a broker telling her that.
So bring us back to the original problem where the mother shows up now with all the papers, and now she has what? Her cell phone with a bunch of tokens on it. Like, tell us what she shows up to the bank with, and why the bank likes what they see.
Correct. So what happens now, right? And so the way we built it is we wanted to keep the promise of delivering everything via SMS. So the mother now starts building via SMS a history, not only of the tokens, right? Because the token is just a alphanumeric number, right? It's not a crypto. It's just a number, But it shows the actual price, the quality, the quantity, and the payout, right? And it builds this history. And if she goes to a bank, right, or if she goes to a phone company, she can say, hey, I am a supplier for this large brand in this supply chain. You can look me up. There's two mechanisms. She can show her cell phone. She has this economic passport, as we call it. Or the bank or the phone company has a partnership with the brand where they have access to BanQu and they can look her up. So the experience is on both sides, right? So the SMS is, just SMS. But if they logged on,
so they can see the entire transaction history.
Asset, payout, quality. And so now suddenly you've shown that not only the mother has identity, but she has this transaction history, right?
She has a real business that's bankable.
Right.
Yeah.
Because what we do is, as a part of the identity, we capture other things. So for example, we can capture her landmass. If you have an IoT sensor, we can integrate to the IoT sensor and we can tell you the moisture content.
Wow.
Right. So if you're trying to do agronomy, then hey, this mother could use a small plot tractor, for example,
I see.
And things like that. So, we're talking to, for example, crop insurance companies who want to then leverage this history to offer crop insurance. Because if you know who the farmer is,
I see.
You know their transaction identity, which is every bag, and you know the land mass, which is soil, moisture, you just drop the price of premium.
Interesting. That's really exciting. So bringing it back. So basically, we have a use case, which is focused on, farmers in developing countries that are part of a global supply chain. That prior to BanQu, a blockchain application platform, were not able to participate in the banking aspects that any other enterprise in a developing country would get access to, right? Which allows them to get access to more capital to grow their business, right? And the primary reason is there's no transaction history. There's no identity around the economics of their business, effectively, not the identity of the person.
Correct.
And now we have a blockchain using the transparency of the blockchain, and the whole concept of the distributed ledger to capture all the information across the entire supply chain.
Correct.
So is this would you describe it as a supply chain system, or would you supply chain management system on the blockchain, or would you describe it as where do you think your passion lies as to why you're doing this and what this is really about?
So the passion is pretty straightforward, right? We want to enable 100 million people out of extreme poverty in the next 5 to 10 years and be a $100 million revenue company, right? So that's kind of the purpose. That's and
pretty
profit.
Exciting, pretty clear.
Yes, very very. And the model works are pretty simple, right? Large brands are spending $10 to $50 million today annually on just certifying their supply chains. They can spend $1 million with us, and they'll get double the transparency that they have gotten. But to answer the point around, the mother, just kind of anchoring back on the mother, right, which is the piece I wanted to talk about, is that all this transaction data that's happening around the mother, right? It's actually opening the door to an ecosystem, which has never been opened, right? So that's the piece that is kind of the real passion, right? So the real passion is you look at these big brands. They're already profiting by investing or buying our software because literally overnight they've opened a new market. So the farmers are buyers of their products. They have a supply chain that's more traceable, transparent, auditable, but it's also better forecasting. So it's a pure commercial. But the ecosystem piece is kind of what I wanted to just zero in on, because I kind of missed that, is that if the mother now has this history, right, you can now bring in ecosystem players who will consume her data without her having to be fragmented. So what does that mean, right? If the mother says, this is my land and this is my crop, and there's a brand that has bought her crop, you can introduce a John Deere, for example. You can introduce a mobile phone company. You can introduce a fertilizer company and say, hey, because her KYC, know your customer is more than just identity, you can bring in a small plot tractor at a lower price point.
Right. If I'm a farmer, I'm developing crops. I'm selling my crops. I'm part of an economic supply chain. It gives me the opportunity to participate in an ecosystem that supports that type of business.
Correct.
And in these developing countries, these young women farmers and so forth are not able to participate in that because there is no visibility or identity around those transactions.
Correct.
And now this blockchain solution allows that to change.
Correct.
So that they can participate in the economic opportunities, and economic opportunities come from access to more capital, access to the products and things that can help them grow their business, creating a whole ecosystem around them. The reason I do the comparison is to sort of like why doesn't that exist there as well? Because they are farming, but it's a whole different world, and that's for me, that's one of the exciting things about this technology, because it can solve some pretty, persistent problems in the world that have a very simple solution if it has access to the right technology and it's broad. So that's pretty exciting.
And there's two more industries, right? So they're kind of interconnected, right? So we look at farming, conflict minerals, and fashion. They're all kind of like if you're in sub-Saharan Africa, right? You're standing in a 5-mile radius, you'll see that they're mining the cobalt for your iPhone. Right, it's the same place that they're growing your shea butter for your cosmetics, and they are growing your coffee beans, right? Wow. So what our research has shown, and that's why we're so focused now on being a supply chain company software. So I didn't answer that part. We're a supply chain management company software, actually, end-to-end. So blockchain as a service, and with records management to support it, right? In 3 key industries: fashion, agriculture, and conflict minerals. Because if you look at those 3, there's about 1 billion people today who are
that deal with this problem inside of those.
Right. And there's 2.5 billion people who live in extreme poverty today, of which 1 billion are actually in that supply chain of multi-billion-dollar companies that are producing raw materials or finished goods, right? So for us, it was kind of like a no-brainer. We said, well, if we build a supply chain software, right, that allows these brands to be more profitable with more responsibility, you can now pull millions of people out of poverty. If you just looked at these 3 industries.
Interesting.
And it's supply chain.
Very
At the end of the day, it's a product moves from point A to B to C, and it shows up. Right. I mean, our dream is simple, right?
Shows up at your local Starbucks. I mean, we all participate. Right.
I mean, if you ask where did this coffee come from, the real question is, did you really know? Right. I mean, I'm not. It's not. You don't really. Right. It's like the dream is. I have teenage daughters. Right. My dream is I want my 16-year-old to get up and say, "Mom, do we know where these Abercrombie jeans came from?"
Right.
Right. We don't. We don't know that if they were made by slave labor in Haiti or Honduras. We don't.
There's no way to know.
Right. And these are the same people who are in extreme poverty. Right. So that's kind of the connection we've made using blockchain.
It's awesome. So let's take a zoom back.
Yes.
We're running low on time. So
yes, sorry.
Let's talk generally about blockchain.
Yes.
There's one theory we've been toying with and talking about here at Soluna, and that is this concept that people are calling it Internet 3.0. I like to call it the new city, where you're basically building a lot of what you described is new capability being added to the technology landscape, if you will. And my view is that that will continue. You're going to have entire systems, networks, blockchain capabilities that are solving real world problems. Some of them are going to be private platforms that have specific customer bases and have a certain mission. Some of are going to be large global networks that participate in this. And the question I have for you, just to get your thoughts, is sort of, and the concept is that when you look at that new city, there's different layers, right? So there's the core infrastructure layer, that's powering just the management of the blockchain.
Right.
And then there's
the TCP/IP.
Exactly. If you relate it to sort of like the internet, is like the low level infrastructure, right? Which is kind of like where Soluna lives. And then up, you're going to have these specific types of networks.
Yes.
And so you might really look at the BanQu platform, even though it's a software platform. It is a network in that it has participants participating in these transactions. And then above you have very specific applications. In your case, from the supply chain side, they're looking at their supply chain. From the farmer's side, it's a way to build economic identity.
Correct.
Do you see that happening more and more over time? And what are some other examples where you see that happening? First of all, do you agree with sort of that sort of layering, if you will?
No, first of all, yes. By the way, love the Soluna model. No, so completely agree with the layers. I think where it will move towards is that we will stop thinking about blockchain in its own terms, and it'll be more around either point solutions or platforms, right?
Right.
And I think where it's going to move towards is interoperability, and interoperability that is currency agnostic. That's kind of if you're really trying, at least in the space we live, right? We want to pull 100 million people out of poverty.
So for your view, it's not about generating value and new currencies that have value. Right. It's not about that. It's more about solving problems.
Yes,
basically.
Exactly. Because currency is here to stay. Don't get me wrong. I mean, crypto is not going away, and it's probably going to go up and down, but then it'll stabilize and strengthen. But real value,
the crypto asset has a role in solving the problem. Like, for instance, if you didn't want to keep the money in the local fiat, you could use the cryptocurrency.
Yes.
And allow the farmer to purchase goods globally.
Exactly.
That might be a way
so
to do it.
BanQu will is almost creating a marketplace.
Right. Exactly. And so you could use your token as a way to exchange for products and stuff like
Bingo.
that.
And it's kind of over time. Exactly. Over time it'll get there, right? I mean, we're talking to folks where they like that suddenly we have 10,000 farmers and they're like, oh, we can now offer crop insurance to them, right?
Right.
They never thought. It's like a whole new market that opened up for insurance companies through BanQu.
Got it.
It didn't exist before,
That's right. Yeah.
But the value piece is kind of, it's in my humble opinion, it's going to be at the individual level, which is kind of where you started the conversation, right? At BanQu, we use 4 words, and it can rub some people the wrong way. But at the end of the day, we say, if you're trying to end extreme poverty, right? The person who lives in extreme poverty has to have the ability to own, access, monetize, and permission their data. These 4 rights have never been given to people in poverty, right? And which is kind of the anti-Facebook, right?
Yeah,
it's like,
that's right.
I own, I access, I monetize,
all my data.
and I permission your data, right?
Right.
And so where, in my humble opinion, it's going towards is, right, models like BanQu, we've held the line on saying the farmer has the ability to own, and this is true today for all my farmers and refugees and the homeless that use our platform, right? They can own, access, monetize, and permission their data, right? If you go onto the BanQu platform, you can actually choose as a farmer how much data you want to share with the John Deere or whatever, right? And I think that's where it's going to move, which means technology companies have to realize that their model would be less around build, own, monetize.
Right.
It's going to be build, distribute, and use marketplaces to create value. So that's
And that's data. There's this whole concept of data is almost the new value.
Exactly.
I mean, if you can, we are generating data. They've been generating this transaction data for a long time, but it's never created any value for them personally.
Correct.
And the blockchain has the potential to do that in this new city concept.
Exactly. Right.
This is great. Ashish, thanks so much for taking the time and joining us today. We've run out of time. I'd love to talk to you about a bunch of things, but we'll grab a beer at some point to do
Done
that.
Done deal.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time. Check us out on YouTube, Telegram, lots of other content, and we're going to do more of these use cases.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.